All right, so let's get started. We're gonna do the live review of Wikistack testing, in which we write a whole bunch of tests. What would you particularly like for me to touch on as we do this? Yeah. Done. Oh yeah. Kind of forgot about that when introducing Mocha. I don't know how to. It's not the right transliteration. Yeah. What's that? Oh, so like testing hooks. Sorry, in controller testing get? Like GET? Oh, yeah, so testing get with supertest. Okay. Oh, this should be a, hang on. Should be a markdown file. Yeah, okay. All right, what else? Okay, we'll start with that. If you have questions as I get to them, just blurt them out. Okay, what should we start with? What does the workshop want us to start on? Model tests, which is good because model tests are usually the highest value tests you can write in your backend, mostly because they're relatively easier than controller tests or like rep tests, and your controllers ideally should not have a lot of code in them. Your models might, especially when they have like methods and stuff to test. So I need to create my tests directory, and then put a test thing in my package.json. I already installed Mocha. Oops, can't have those. And when I npm test, okay, can't find that thing, which we'd expect. Okay, so we're gonna test our page model. So let's touch tests page.spec.js. I guess page.model.spec.js. Tests. Cannot find any test files matching pattern test. Really? Oh, test, not tests. Okay, great. So if I do the npm test -w thing, then I'll get to watch the tests. Right now there are no tests, which means all 0 tests are passing. Let's write a test now. So describe the page model. What are some nice things we can say about the page model? I guess it has a couple of virtuals. Where is my model? Here's my model. Okay, so the page model has, so we could write a test of like these things, title, URL title, and content and status. It's not totally unreasonable to do so, so sure, let's just do that. Const page, wait, let page, so let's create a page. And we will say, we will expect this page to have the things it has. Oh, I'm putting tags. So it as fields title, URL title, content, status tags. I'm not going to name all of those. So expect page.title to be a guys. Would one of the fellows mind yelling at whoever just turned the lights on? Thank you. Yeah, that's also annoying. Expect page content to be a string, status to be null. I don't know if that works. Not to be. And then expect page tags to be an array. I don't think that works. Array dot is array of page dot tags to be true. Come on. Oh, watch doesn't watch the tests? Really? It's terrible. Oh, I need to import the page model. Where is it? / models. Do we export it as page? We do. Great. What's that?
We exported it as model and then we created it.
Models, there we go. Yeah, so I'll pull in page from models. Can I find models sequelize? Really? Is it not install? Oh, I didn't npm install. Yeah. Okay, while that's installing, let's ask about the virtuals. So route is one virtual, and what do we expect that to do? Yeah.
The way you have defined that page is equal to required.
Mm-hmm.
Does it take a page class and only page element from that model? Is that something you're saying?
Yes. That's the destructuring assignment.
So the page should be same as we have in the model. Like, whatever variable we will be destructuring it to should be the same. It should exist in the model.
Yeah, so if I exported this by a different name, I would have to use that name here. I can also rename it. Page. Oops. So now the thing that is exported as page will be known as pag here. But maybe don't do that. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, page is still not defined. Why?
Because there you are declaring constant as a capital
Page.
you want to
But it's exported as page.
constant page is equal to capital U more than small. You are creating an instance.
Oh. That's not the thing that's not defined, though. Yeah, I know, but it's saying capital P is not defined on line 5, so it's failing here. Just suspicious. Oh, but that was it. So this seems wrong, right? This should have been lowercase p page is not defined.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, great. So there are validations, which means I can't just create an empty page. So that's fine. Let's create a page with some test data, which will be great because we need to do that anyway. So before everything, let's create Yeah, but why not just create one that's actually correct? So before everything, page equals await page.create. And we'll say that the title is testing, the URL title is test. Let's do test-driven development. PPD, development. Content cannot be null. It's awesome if you do it. Now what did I do? Unexpected token on line 9 because why? Because I had too many closing increments. Validation error. Why? Which validation error? Let's find out which validation failed. Catch error console.error error.path. Oh, expect is not defined. But oh, here I see undefined. Right, because it's error.errors map. So it's a problem in URL title. What's the problem with URL title? Wait, what's the
it's virtual data, so it's created off of the title when
URL title?
Yeah.
No, it's not. Is it? It's here. Oh, I see. It's thrown in there. Yeah, I guess I don't have to do that, but I shouldn't. Spec does not define. Okay, so that's interesting. I'm not totally sure why, what it was failing on when I was defining URL title. But it's fixed now, so great. Oh, no, it's not fixed now. So URL title still has a problem. Let's just... How about we just stringify our errors? With more indentation. Okay, so URL title must be unique. Oh, right. So this is a problem where we're not dropping the page table before we do everything. So let's do that first. So before everything, just page.delete. There's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to say page.sync force true. Relation users does not exist. How about db.sync force true? Sync everything. Cool. Okay. So setting this up is a little bit of a nightmare, but most of your model tests will kind of look like this. You'll have, before the test, just like wipe out the database. That's not uncommon. And then like create an exemplar and do some tests on it, and then you might have other describe blocks with different exemplars that test different things. So in this case, I should not need this anymore. Great. Expect is not defined, so let's pull that in. Require try. Expect to be. Really? Didn't I use that like not so long ago? I have a feeling that if I just do upgrade try. What did you use for this? Oh, I guess they didn't have you check this thing.
I don't think they. Oh, no,
Expect to be is not a function. Oh, wait, no, that's right. Sorry. To be a string. Oh, right, sorry. That's it. To equal. Okay. Page tags isn't a function, or if page tags isn't an array. Is this one of those stupid arrays with a getter? It's got a setter. Oh, I guess it's going to come back as a string. Okay, so tag page expected null to be a string. Oh, maybe I need to specify it. Tags is testing this. Okay, so this to deep equal testing. Great. Okay, great. And we just watched this test fail like 5 times, so we have some pretty high confidence this is testing the right things. What's next? We want to test these array virtuals. Sorry, was there a question? Did I see a hand? No? Okay. So let's test some of these virtuals. Route should be the URL title with wiki in front of it. So let's see, page model. So opinions vary on what you should name your tests. My preference is that the like path to a given test kind of reads like a sentence. So like the page model has fields. Okay, the page model has fields is kind of a sentence. The page model, unfortunately, when you're talking about individual things, it's hard to make it read exactly right. So I just usually say dot route is that me? Well, nothing I can do about it now. Just drown it. It's not waterproof. Is wiki URL title. Okay. And then we can say, okay, expect page.route to equal wiki page.url title. And if we break this, then it actually shows us the expectation. Whoopsie. Okay, we can do the same thing for the rendered content. Oh, which actually should probably have some markdown in it in order to test this. So rendered content is kind of weird, right? Because it calls into this markdown interpreter, which technically, actually, I'll go ahead and show you how you might stub that. This might get kind of nasty. So the thing we actually have to test in rendered content is that it calls into the markdown, that it calls some markdown interpreter. We don't really need to test that it converts markdown correctly, because that's tested by all the tests of this thing, of marked. We can do a decent job by just saying, let's see, it's awesome if you do it. So now this should have markdown. And then rendered content renders markdown. So expect page.rendered content to equal it's awesome if you do it. This is one of those things you're never really supposed to do, but I'm going to do it right now. Copy the actual output, paste it into the spec. It works! It's working. Oh, no, I broke it. It's not working. Awesome. Here we go. It's like spot the difference. It's awesome if you do it. It's awesome if you do it. Don't these look really similar to you? Oh, that's probably it, isn't it? Yep. Oh, no. Yeah, there we go. Good call, good call. I was like, are there unprintable spaces? No, they're just like spaces. Okay, cool. So any questions on that? The other way of doing this would be to like replace the marked function, like stub it out and expect that we call the marked function. I'm not going to worry about that. That's much harder than it needs to be for a relatively simple test. Okay, what's next? Those were the virtuals. Hooks. Okay, let's look at a hook. Yeah, what are the hooks we have? So before validate, okay, so this is where we're expecting the URL title to be something. So here we might say it sets URL title to equal page title. Here, we'll test a few different incarnations of this. So this says we just replace all spaces with underscores, and everything that's not a word character with an empty string. So yeah, so that's where the few tests, I think. So describe has a URL title hook. How about generates a URL title? Okay, what does it do? It converts spaces to underscores. So I can do, actually, do I do this as an async function? I can do page.create. I think do I need this as an async? I don't think I need this as an async function. Let's just try it without that. So create a page whose title is hello world. What are the other required things? Content is the only other required thing, right? Because content is empty. Then, yeah, I'm really liking async await these days. So we expect that to have property URL title equal to hello world. And if I break this like that, okay, so it's still passing. Let's actually just say this converts one space, converts many spaces to one underscore. So why did I title something this? Should be why did I title something this? Okay. Still works if I break it, or it breaks if I break it. What else did we say? Oh yeah, it converts non-word characters to converts non-word characters to it just removes non-word characters. So let's see, all about unicorns, a pizza primer should become all about S, a primer. Oh crap, look at that. So this is probably actually a bug, right? Like, we shouldn't get double underscore in here. And that's happening because we replace the spaces and then we replace the non-word characters. And probably we should just so we should just fix this bug in our code and say first replace the non-word characters, then turn everything into spaces, or turn all spaces into a single underscore. Crap. Why? Why though? All. Sorry, this captures. Okay, this says all word characters. How do I say all word characters that are not, all non-word characters that are also not a space? Oh man. Is it this? It's like not a word or a space. Oh. Oh, thank God. So this says find. I think I don't need this caption group. Yeah. So this says find all all runs of characters of one or more characters that matches the negated character class, so that are not either word characters or spaces. And then this says find all contiguous spaces and replace them with underscores.
Is that what the plus sign is, like contiguous spaces?
Yeah, so the plus sign says one or more.
Okay.
So this says match spaces one or more. And this says match not word or space one or more. Oh, great. So our tests are already working for us. They're finding bugs in our provided code. Okay. Any questions on hooks? Who's like currently in a state of... Okay. That's good to know. That's going to be the case for a while. It's often harder to write specs than it is to write the code. Because to write the spec, you kind of have to like think about the code from a very different angle.
It's a bit like writing when you've got the code already.
That's, yeah, that's also, I don't like this workshop for that reason.
Oh, is that not even easier? Because you just sort of try to make it natural.
Yeah, I mean, it can be easier, but it also kind of feels more pointless. Yeah.
Kind of unrelated question. You were having trouble deciding what to do .create versus .build. I know .create returns a promise and .build returns an object.
Yeah, so .build doesn't save it to the database, and it doesn't run hooks. So if you're trying to test hooks, you probably want to run create, or at least call build and save. Create is basically like build and then save immediately.
When you call like the weight in front of it, because we're trying to like set variable equals to page.create, it would then be a promise and not an object, so it wouldn't help. Like, we ran into trouble with that. That much makes sense.
Oh, so you can do that if you use async await. That's like the easiest way of doing it. Like this maybe isn't the most readable. Like I could blow this out into this situation and say page is await page create, oops, and then expect page to have property URL title with the value hello world. Oh crap, what did I do? Unexpected identifier, or cont page. Okay. Which is basically it. So what I just did is equivalent to this. It's just I'm not storing it in an intermediate variable. You can also, if you don't want to use async await, you can say page.create, then take that page and do the expectation on it. Oh, wait. Is that? Yeah.
You bring that up, the one that when you had it to set the
Yeah, here, I'll do this one that way. Wait, sorry, with the intermediate variable?
when you set it to variable,
Yeah, so that's like const page is await this page, and then there we go. So it's like three different ways to use promises in here. Notice that we don't have to say explicitly like return a promise when we have an async function. The async keyword ensures that a promise is always returned. Even if you return nothing, an async function always returns a promise, I think. Yeah. I think so. Let's just find out though. So async, this function does nothing whatsoever, and if I call it, it returns a promise. So yeah. Yeah. No, hooks are run during the process of saving it to the database. So build doesn't touch the database. Basically, build doesn't do anything that can be undone. It doesn't like send anything to the database. It doesn't like get ready to do things. But your hooks run at various points in the objects going towards the database. And so, if you want to run the hooks, you have to like be in the process of actually changing stuff and writing stuff into the database.
What if you got on to make all your like brackets the colours of the ones that match?
It is bracket pair colorizer. Good name, I think. Yeah, it's kind of nice. The jury's a little bit out for me, like how useful it is necessarily, but I like to think it's having some subconscious effect. Okay, cool. What else do we want to test? Did I answer this question about testing hooks? Okay, yay. I didn't answer done. Okay, so let's grab one of these. What's a good one? Let's do, wait, maybe we can roll this into the next one. No, okay, let's just grab one of these. So, some of our tests are synchronous. Like, this test is synchronous, right? Page.route is just a getter, and we are expecting that its value right now synchronously is equal to the string. In those cases, Mocha runs the function, and if the function throws, meaning an assertion fails, then the test fails. Otherwise, the test does not fail. Very simple. But a lot of the time, we want to test asynchronous things. Like here, we want to like create this page, and then, like after the page has been created and the hooks run, or after the page has failed to be created and the hooks failed, or the validations failed, we want to finish. We want to have some expectations on that. Actually, let's do this with when we talk about validations. So one way of telling Mocha I have an asynchronous test is to just return a promise, or have an async function which always returns a promise. The other way is to explicitly take done. I think this workshop has you explicitly take done. I'm going to say probably you should return a promise or use an async function. This workshop was written before async was a thing. Okay, so let's look at validations. Is that sensible? Is that on the page model or the user model? Who wrote validations? Or validation tests? I know I saw some validation tests. Do I have to look this up? I do. Okay, okay, so let's try and test some of the validations we have on page. One of those is going to be, let's see, allow null is actually a database thing, I think. Oh, here we go, email. That's on the user model. Does this work? Like, what if I create, oh, well, let's just try it. So if page.title is null, okay, so describe validation. The page model has validations. It must have a title. Okay, so right now I would probably say write this as an async function where we try and page equals await page.create with no title, just some content, and then, oh, actually, we should do this. Should not do this with async await, just because I don't want to wrap it in a try catch. Instead, we'll do it with a normal function. We'll return this promise, and we'll say catch some error, and we're going to expect error.errors to have length 1. Is that a thing? I guess we'll find out.
And so this was the one where you said you don't use curly braces at
Yeah, so I don't have the curly brackets around page.create, so this whole right-hand side is going to be returned. I could have them here, or this could just be a function, and then I just have to say return over here. Which maybe I'll do that to minimize mind-blownness for the moment. So when, okay, so if this fails, we expect it to have one error, and it should be in title, error.errors, and we expect title, let's call this title error, to have property path title. Oh. Oops. It's not Swift, actually. It's not Ruby. Just JavaScript. Oh, there are 2 errors. What are the 2 errors? What are the 2 errors? I don't even know.
That first error is every time we are adding the data, so it will always fail. Like the foo and bar one is yeah, this one. It's checking length to have 1, but we are every time adding pen. How many times we will run the test case, it will create a row that many times.
Well, this should be, this is the number of errors that were returned in this from this page create
No,
call.
but we are hard-codedly checking it with 1, not the length.
But there should only be 1 error, I think.
But there should be I mean, every time we are running the test scripts, we are adding before each, right? Before we are adding.
Well, we're also blowing away everything in the database. But that wouldn't affect this either, right? Unless, like, the number of errors wouldn't grow with the number of things in the table. There's just something else that's failing. Here we go. Okay, so what's the problem? Title. Oh, and URL title is also failing. I guess I could say this should have error 2. It's kind of counterintuitive to say this, because like, why? Let's just look at the first one and expect it to be on the title. Great. And if we say that has property path titles, it fails. Okay. And what are some other things we could test on that? We want to say that it's a not null violation, right? So we can say expect title error to have proper. Could I even say to contain? I'm looking this up. Try to contain properties. To have properties. No. No, I can't do this. Okay, fine, we'll just do it twice. To have property what looks reasonably stable is null, or validator key is null. Okay. This is basically saying we expected title to not be null, but it is null. There's one other problem, which is that if I get rid of this validation entirely, now the test, fails first. Let's just say we have no validations. Now the test is passing, which is like definitely a problem, right? The whole point of this test is to ensure that we have the correct validations, but it passes if we don't have any. Why is that? Yeah, so if page.create doesn't, if page has no validations, and this create succeeds, we never enter the catch block. So that's bad if we're looking for validations. So what I would recommend doing is something like, we'll say then, and we can do a lot of things here. I'm going to say expect true to equal false, and then you can give it an error message, and the error message I'm going to specify is page should have failed because title was null. Should have page.create succeeded even though title was null. What's that? What? I think I have a different problem here. Oh. Damn it. Okay, let's do it at the bottom, actually. So the problem here is that I am throwing this expect throws, which means the assertion error gets handled by this catch, which is not what we want. We want this. Oh, maybe we don't want this either. Actually, you know what I think we want? We want to make this a .then, and then we want, there we go. This is a good use case for the 2 listeners on a then. There we go. Page creates sleep if no title is null. And then if we add a validation on title, passes. So the reason this works is because having both of these, having the then clause and the error handler on like the same .then means that this exception does not get handled by this catch. But chaining them means that it does. Yeah.
Would you mind like writing it out like a little more like this?
Yeah. What would you like me to blow up?
I guess so. .then is getting all or is being chained off of
This page.create.
okay.
Um,
And it's getting
it gets called with 2 arguments. .then takes 2 arguments, and the first one, we usually only pass in 1, and that's the success handler, but it can also take an error handler. The error handler does not handle errors that occur within the success handler of the .then, which makes it different from .then followed by .catch, where the .catch does catch errors in the previous handler. So I could blow it out more, maybe like...
that explanation was helpful.
Yeah.
The fact that like you're
Yeah, apart from the arrows, it's actually fairly verbose right now. I can do this like, if page creation was successful, if an error occurs. 2 R's? No, 1 R. I saved it and expected the spec to fail if my spelling was wrong. Not true. Okay, so we can do a similar thing for the next. Wait? Are we done with our review right now? No, we have 30 minutes, right? Yes, great. Okay, so we can do the other thing with the same thing with URL title, and say it must have a URL title. This is a little harder to... It's a lot harder to test, actually, right? Because it's going to get created if I don't specify it. Did the workshop want you to test this? Because we are already testing that it has a URL title here, which seems pretty good. We could ensure that there's a validation on it somehow. I'm gonna skip this one. I don't know a good way to disentangle it from title, since it's happening inside one of the hooks. Yeah.
Sorry, it's so obvious, but what are the validations in that? What does that mean? It's like when it's like is, I guess like.
Yeah. So content is one we could do. So like this is a validation, which basically says if this is null, throw when you try and save. I think this validation also creates something in the database where it's like that column is marked as being not null. What are some other validations? In user, there's a email, like validate is email. So if it doesn't look like an email, which I think means to look like an email means it needs an @ sign and a dot after the @ It may not even need the dot after the @ It shouldn't need that now that I think about it. If it doesn't have that, then it throws a validation error. Unique will also throw a validation error if it's not unique. Okay. Oh yeah, so let's look at done. Let's commit this. Wikistack. Okay, so right now we're telling Mocha that this is an asynchronous test because we are returning a promise. This is the same as if we marked this as an async function. Async functions always return promises. Or if we did this thing where we implicitly return the right-hand side of an arrow, that is also just returning this promise. But another way that we can tell Mocha that we are... Oh, crap. That this test is asynchronous is to take... So let's say we... So if we don't return this promise, then something interesting is going to happen. What's going to happen when I save this? And it reruns the test. So if I don't return this promise, what happens when I run the tests? Will they still pass, first of all? It does. The page will get created. What's that? It'll still go through all of this code, but the correctness of the test suite is now compromised. So if I save this, it's still passing, which is great. And now if I expect something weird, it's still passing. You see this error, so it's like, oh, it broke, but it actually didn't. The tests are still passing, which is not good, because the test should at this point be broken, since the test is definitely wrong. And the reason it's not broken is because Mocha is considering this to be a synchronous test. It's calling the function and being like, okay, if the function throws, the test will fail. The function does not throw, it just returns this promise, and Mocha's like, okay, test passed. And then later the promise rejects and Node complains that there's an unhandled rejection, that this expectation failed. So what we have to do, so definitely the preferred way of dealing with this is to return the promise, especially because mostly you will have a promise. But another way of dealing with it is to take done. So if you take a parameter in your it function, then Mocha will pass in a callback called done. And you can call that when your program, or when your tests are done. So around every exit point, I think I can even just say, well, let's just do it manually here. Done. And then done. No, what did I do? There. And now if I break this test, it fails, and it's still an unhandled rejection, and I didn't call done. What happened? So this threw, so this threw, and then I never made it here. Yeah, that's true. Let's try using .finally for this. So I say, oops, finally done. Shouldn't that have called this? Do I have to call done? This should be getting called. Maybe it's not getting called. Let's see. Are we getting into the finally block? We are definitely getting to the finally block. I can kill the process in there. But why? So this is failing, but the rejection is unhandled. If I catch everything, maybe. Okay, that passed, but that actually shouldn't pass. I should be seeing a test failure. Yeah, let's try catching done. Oh, there. Okay, that was it. So I guess... I wonder what finally didn't work. And then what happens if we... Okay, so if we make this pass, that's not working. Maybe then done. Okay, so that fails. That is a test failure, as it should be. That is a test success. And then if I remove the title, it fails. It fails with kind of the wrong assertion, but that's okay. Page create succeeded, even the title was null. Okay, so that's, I guess, the right way to do it. If you're using done, don't use done. that's how it's supposed to work. The reason you might use done is if you have a callback-based API and you're trying to test it, and then it's easy to pass in done. But almost all APIs these days are promise-based, and it's just much, much easier to return a promise, especially because even if you have sort of a complex bit of promise chaining, you can use an async function and await stuff inside of it, and you have a much higher degree of confidence that it'll actually be running the tests than if you do this nutty thing. In conclusion, we need to update this workshop. Wait, this should, and this should return. No. Great. We can do the same thing with content. Man, doesn't it seem like this should be a higher order thing? It must have content. Page.create with title, empty string, no content. If page creation was successful, so content. And this is okay. Like, it is totally fine to have, like, fairly duplicitous tests. Duplicitous. That sounds, you know, you actually don't want that. But it's okay to have a lot of repetition in your tests. Because your tests should err on the side of being simple and explicit rather than clever and terse. Whereas your code, you might pick a different balance. Your code, it's much more acceptable to have clever, terse code, especially because your tests are testing all these examples in sort of a very verbose way. All right, done. Did that help much?
A little.
Okay.
It's still, like, but I'm still kind of trapped in my head around, like.
The real answer is like, don't know that it's a callback that's given to asynchronous tests, because if you might see it, don't use it. Don't like go out of your way to use it. Instead, just return promises or use async functions as your test bodies. It's very easy to accidentally not call done, and thereby have tests that don't test anything, or to call it like too early before all of your expectations are done. There's a lot of caveats, and it's easier to have a promise chain that you know everything is running, or to have a async await function where you know it's getting to the end, must be testing things. Okay, our last question was about supertests, so let's look at some rep tests. Controller testing. Let's do a get. So, okay, what are some routes we have that we might want to test? We have /wiki, which should return all the pages. Sure, let's do that one. So let's create a test wiki.route.test spec.js, and we're going to pull in expect from chai and supertest from supertest. And for our own purposes, we'll require our app. And then let's describe so wiki describe routes. So we'll say it get /wiki okay, so supertest app, when I get /wiki, I expect 200. Oh, already failures. Try is not defined. Oh. Long day. It's been a long day. Sit down and install it. Okay, let's expect a different thing, like 201. Hey, okay, great. So if I make an incorrect expectation, it fails, so I actually have confidence that this expectation is correct. Get wiki returns 200. Scribe with some pages. So for this, we're going to create a few pages. It's a good way of doing that. Say, I guess this will only have one thing in it, so I can just say get wiki returns all pages. Which means I should create some pages first of all. So let's see. Title, page, content. This will do. Title, I'm running out of ideas. Alice in Wonderland. Weird story. Title of the Devourers. Use me now. Okay. If I create all these pages, pages.map, there's promise.map, pages to, wait. I need our database. Okay, so require the models, and then if I also get in, if I pull promise off the database, I'll get promise.map. Neat trick. I won't get autocomplete about promise.map though, which is unfortunate because I don't remember if it takes the iterator first. I'm gonna say it does, I think. Bluebird, promise.map. Iterable. First thing is the iterable. Okay, so map over pages to page.create, and probably I need to do okay, so this will create all of the pages in the database, and then we can do the same get, and we can expect 200 and also expect some regular expressions. So, I guess they don't have to be regular expressions, right? It can just be a page. Oh, that didn't work. Why? Models. Dot models. Okay, so expected a page in this nonsense. Why did that happen? Here are the... Oh, it does have to be a regular expression because it needs to find it in here. So actually, let's get the URL titles of these things. So we'll call this page data. Actually, we don't need to call it anything, right? I can just do this. Great. So here are all my pages. They've been created already at this point because I'm awaiting this promise. And then that means that I can, for each page, is this actually going to work? I have not tried this before. Let's try it. For page of pages, expect, let's say, this is going to return the promise of that. I think I actually want to say let test is super test of all this, and then I'll say test equals test dot expect that we'll call expect the page to contain I have to come up with a regular expression based on a string. I'm not actually sure how to do that. Let's not try and generalize this, and we'll just... Sorry. I thought I could write a little loop to loop over these things and use the URL title. I'll just do it manually. So, and then so we'll expect a page and expect Alice in Wonderland, and expect should fail, and expect the devourers. Devourers. Oh, crap. But why didn't should fail fail? Oh, maybe because I need to await this? Ah. Yay! Okay, so if I expect something wrong, it fails. If I don't, it succeeds. Good enough. Okay, so what we did here, we're trying to test that this, this route returns some things in the database. Ideally, our route tests would be separate from our database, so we wouldn't have to have a working model. In practice, that's really annoying, so we'll just entangle them a little bit and use the model to create some instances of the model based on some test data. And then after that's done, actually don't need to capture pages anymore. After that's done, we go and expect that we see those things on the page. This is not the most complete test, right? We could expect that there's an actual, this needs to be an href to /wiki /that with a quote around it, I think. Maybe that would be a better test. Maybe it wouldn't. This is very clear. This is a little bit messier. Kind of style questions at this point. Oh, again, I can't. I keep wanting to construct regular expressions out of strings, and I think there is actually a way to do this. Maybe it's even really easy. New regex of oh. Okay, it is pretty easy. But I didn't do it. Okay. Who's completely clear on testing now and forever? That's okay. You'll see more tests in your life. Any questions before we adjourn for today? Okay, cool. I will put this code. I will put this code in your library, and this video online. Oh yeah.
Maybe just a summary of
what to take away
where
from
we should
this.
have gone to, or what's a good thing to take away from this.
Yeah. So things to take away from this. Things I would take away from this. In specs, it is the most valuable specs to write are your model specs. Typically, these route tests are the next most valuable, but there's actually a pretty significant drop. Model tests are usually a bit easier to write, and your routes should mostly just be calling model methods. The easiest way to write model tests, especially for asynchronous things, is, and especially for asynchronous operations that involve many asynchronous operations, is to use async await, I think. Don't use done, but done is a callback if you see code that has it. And if you can, so the easiest functions to test are pure functions. So actually, and I should have called this out earlier, it would be better if this URL title generator was a pure function and we were just testing it by calling stuff, right? We wouldn't have to call page.create, we wouldn't have to do .then, these would all just be synchronous tests and our lives would be happier. So the more you can architect your code like that, the happier your lives will be. You call it, it returns something, it always returns the same thing for the same arguments. So like generate URL title could be a pure function that then gets called from a hook. And then it's much harder to screw up, right? Either you do or do not call this pure function from the hook. If you don't call it, the hook doesn't work at all. If you do call it, then the pure function can be extensively tested with simpler to understand tests than this. And that will, and it's like, you have a high degree of confidence that it will work. Executive summary, done.